Hi everyone! Today we were going to discuss the book called The Odyssey. If you want to know the summary of book 1, just keep on watching. As he prepares to relate the account of Odysseus, the narrator of the Odyssey calls the Muse, seeking inspiration. The narrative begins 10 years after Trojan War, which is the topic of the Iliad. Except for Odysseus, all of the Greek heroes have returned home. Odysseus is trapped on the isolated island of Ogygia by the goddess Calypso, who has fallen in love with him and will not let him go. Meanwhile, a crowd of suitors is generating his estate in Ithaca and courting his wife, Penelope, in the hopes of capturing his kingdom. Telemachus, who was a child when Odysseus left but is now young man, is unable to stop them. He has accepted the possibility that his father is no longer alive. Athena flies to Ithaca with Zeus' permission to meet with Telemachus. Athena, in the disguise of Odysseus' old friend Mentes, reveals that Odysseus is still alive and will return to Ithaca eventually. She advises Telemachus to gather the suitors and proclaim their banishment from his father's estate. She then informs him that he must travel to Pylos and Sparta to ask about his father. After this conversation, Telemachus runs across Penelope in the suitor's quarter, who is angry about a song that the court bard is singing. Like Homer in the Iliad, the bards sing of the Greeks' suffering on their return from Troy, and his song makes the heartbroken Penelope much sadder than she is. Telemachus rebukes Penelope, much to her surprise. He tells her that Odysseus is not the only Greek who has not returned from Troy, and that if he doesn't like the music in the men's quarter, she should withdraw to her chamber and let him handle her interests among the suitors. He then informed the suitors that he will call an assembly the next day and order them to leave his father's estate. Antinous and Eurymachus, two particularly aggressive suitors, rebuke Telemachus and question the name of the stranger with whom he has just been chatting. Despite his suspicion that his guest is the goddess in disguise, Telemachus simply tells them that the man is a friend of his father. Homer discusses various themes that will reoccur throughout the epic in Book 1. Hospitality, reputation, and power are examples of this. In Odysseus' world, one's most valuable property is his excellence in reputation. One's reputation is defined by how others see him, evaluating his characters, morals, and action in light of societal norms and mores. And the reader first sees Penelope's suitors take advantage of her hospitality. Antinous, on the other hand, brings up the subject of power when he questions Telemachus' ability to rule. Hi guys, I'm back again for the book 2 of the Odyssey by Homer. The next day, when the assembly rises, Aegyptius, a knowledgeable Ithacan elder, speaks first. He commends Telemachus for filling his father's shoes, emphasizing that this is the first time the assembly has been gathered since Odysseus' disappearance. Telemachus then delivers an emotional speech in which he laments the loss of both his father and his father's kingdom, which has been taken over by his mother's suitors, the son of Ithaca's elder. He criticized them for wasting his father's cattle and sheep while they pursue their romance day after day, when any good man would just approach Penelope's father, Icarius, and ask for her hand in marriage. Antinous blamed the delay on Penelope, whom he accuses of seducing every suitor but committing to none. He tells the suitor of a plan Penelope made to avoid remarrying. She insisted on choosing spouse as soon as she finished weaving a funeral cloth for her elderly father-in-law Laertes. But at night, she meticulously removed the knitting she had achieved throughout the day, ensuring that the clock would never be completed. If Penelope is unable to plan, Antinous said that she should be returned to Icarius so that he can find her a new spouse. Telemachus, the dutiful son, refuses to cast his mother out and petitioned the gods to punish the suitors. A pair of eagles engaged in a fight appears overhead at that moment. The soothsayer Halitherses sees their battle as a sign of Odysseus' near homecoming and warns the suitors that if they do not depart, they would face murder. The suitors object to such foolishness, and the gathering comes to an end. Athena returns to Telemachus as he prepares for his journey to Pylos and Sparta, this time disguised as Mentor, another old friend of Odysseus. She encourages him and predicts a great trip for him. She then goes to town and, disguised as Telemachus himself, gathers a faithful crew to man his ship. For fear of upsetting his mother, Telemachus informs none of the household staff about his trip. He only informs Euryclea, his wise and elderly caregiver. She begs him not to venture out on the broad sea like his father, but he calms her anxiety by claiming that he knows a god is on his side. The theme of Book 2 is cunning and deception. Deception is used in the world as a necessity for survival. Athena offers help in disguises as Telemachus and a friend of Odysseus, while the narrative of the loom depicts the queen's cunning as well as the suitor's density. She stated that she would make a choice after the shroud was completed. During the day, the renowned weaver worked on a massive loom in the royal chambers. She secretly unraveled what she had done at night, amazingly tricking the young suitors who appeared to be either slow of wit or too drunk to notice the deception.
Good day. Today, we are going to discuss the book called The Odyssey. If you want to know the summary of Book 3, just keep on watching. Telemachus and Athena, disguised as his mentor, arrive in Pylos and watch a bull sacrifice to Poseidon. Athena instructs Telemachus to search out and monitor Nestor, as well as to be brave in investigating about his father's whereabouts. Nestor does not have much details for them, but he does inform them the story of Agamemnon, who fought on the side of Odysseus in the Trojan War, and compares Penelope's fidelity and devotion to Agamemnon's wife, Clytemnestra's conflict. Nestor welcomes Telemachus and gives him assistance in the matter of his son, Pisistratus. Nestor also instructs Telemachus to travel to Sparta and meet with Agamemnon's brother, Menelaus. And Athena changes into an eagle. Nestor acknowledged this as thus Athena. It thus highlights a crucial plot twist in the book about mortals identifying the gods' actions and paying respect to them as a matter of duty. One of the main themes in Book 3 is hospitality. Hospitality was so significant to the ancient Greeks that they used a word to describe a relationship between guests and hosts. Xenia. According to tradition, ancient Greek hosts generously provided travelers with food, wine, shelter, and clothing. In return, visitors offered hosts with international news. This connection was presided over by the god Jove, who penalized those who broke its rules. Nestor embodies the obedient host, and he hesitates to let Telemachus sleep on his ship. having shared food and shelter is a family activity. And by engaging in this sort of relationship, a man remembers that he is not only a member of his primary family, but also a much bigger group called humanity. Homer as well addresses the issue of justice. During Telemachus and Nestor's dinner conversation, Nestor tells the story of Orestes, who avenged his father Agamemnon's death by murdering the man who murdered Agamemnon. Based on the ancient Greeks, justice is based on the rule of an eye for eye principle. Because there weren't any police officer in ancient Greece, justice was often administered by individuals. Thus, Homer concludes that having a large number of strong sons is beneficial to a man because it ensures that their father receives justice. The said burning desire for justice is only second in priority to the ancient Greeks' desire for immortal fame. Nestor exhorts Telemachus to avenge the suitor's wrongdoing.
Hi guys! Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Vina Ora, and for today's video, I'm gonna share with you the summary of Book 4 of Homer's Odyssey. So if you want to know more, just keep on watching! In Book 4, Telemachus and Pisistratus go to Sparta to meet Menelaus and Queen Helen. At Menelaus' palace, where the monarch is celebrating the double weddings of his son and daughter, Telemachus and Pisistratus come. In order to acknowledge the generosity he experienced from strangers while traveling, Menelaus ordered his attendant to invite the guests to celebrate with them. Telemachus tells Pisistratus that Menelaus' palace must have the magnificent or resemblance of Olympus. But Menelaus responds that no mortal man could match Zeus. He talks of his 8 years of travel, his money, and his anger at his brother's death, Agamemnon. Menelaus claims that although he mourns for all of his colleagues, he feels sad for Odysseus in particular, since he struggled the hardest and experienced the most suffering. And as soon as Telemachus heard his father's name, tears started to slip down on his cheek. Menelaus then understands that he is talking with Odysseus' son. Helen, the wife of Menelaus, appears from her room and asks questions about the guests, speculating that Telemachus may be one of them, and she realized that the young guy shows many similarities to Odysseus, and Pisistratus confirms their relationship. The men's sorrows are forgotten because to a medication, Helen slips into the wine. He informs the visitor about Odysseus' victory of Troy, describing how he went into the city while pretending to be a beggar, killed many Trojans, and then returned to his army with important details about the enemies. Only Helen recognized him, but she kept it a secret because she had already committed to having an affair and was daydreaming about returning to her husband and child. In the morning, Menelaus confronts Telemachus, asking whether he has come to resolve a public or a private issue. Telemachus asks Menelaus about his father, and he informs him about his mother's suitor, terrible and disrespectful behavior. Then Menelaus said that Odysseus are alive and trapped on Calypso's island. So how did Menelaus know? When Menelaus was imprisoned by the gods in calm seas near the island of Pharos as punishment for insufficient sacrifice, Menelaus came Idothea, Proteus' daughter, after the crew's supplies had run out, and she made the decision to help him. She encouraged him to ambush Proteus. She warned him that Proteus would appear in a variety of ways, but that if they held on to him until he spoke, he would reveal the route they should take to cross the ocean and get back to their home. After the men ambushed Proteus, Proteus changed into a lion, a serpent, a panther, a stream of water, and a tree before the men could stop him. However, the guys stuck with him until he started to talk. So how did Menelaus get away from Pharos and get back home?
Menelaus was encouraged by Proteus to go back to Egypt and make impressive sacrifices to the gods. Proteus also told him that Ajax died at the hands of Poseidon and Agamemnon at the hands of Aegisthus. And Proteus said that Odysseus was trapped on Calypso's island. The suitors Eurymachus and Antonius discover that Telemachus has secretly sailed to Pylos in the meantime. When he returns to Ithaca, they plan to ambush and murder him. When Penelope hears of the suitors' strategy, she becomes worried. But later that evening, in a dream, Athena sends a phantom in the form of Penelope's sister, Iphiam, who shows up to her and promises her that Telemachus will return home securely because the immortal gods would protect him from the potential suitors. When Penelope asks Athena about Odysseus, Athena stays silent. The theme for Book 4 are lineage, wealth, and hospitality. Lineage is a major theme in Book 4. Despite not knowing Telemachus and Pisistratus when they arrive in Sparta, Menelaus observed that they must be the sons of scepter-bearing kings, since they carry an air of royalty. The Greeks of antiquity assumed that great men produced noble sons. Wealth is another important theme in Book 4. Menelaus is the richest man in the world, and Telemachus and Pisistratus are impressed by the magnificence of Menelaus' mansion when they first arrive in Sparta. But for Menelaus, he would rather be poor and avoid tragedy than wealthy and continue to go through the hardships he has already experienced. In contrast to the heroes of Iliad, Menelaus shows guilt about fighting in the Trojan War and losing many of his friends. In the Iliad, Achilles, Agamemnon, and even Menelaus crave fame and glory. However, in the Odyssey, the heroes reject fame and glory in favor of a peaceful and trouble-free life.
And now we're down to the last part of this literary analysis. My name is Jana, and let me share to you the approaches and some takeaways from Homer's epic poetry, The Odyssey. Homer's epic poetry is unquestionably at the top of the list when discussing literary classics, and for some readers, it might even be the best because of its enduring appeal. Homer is known for his epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, which will be the highlight of this literature analysis. As an opening for the Odyssey, we would love to put some emphasis on the structure, format, and general details of the epic before actually going to its actual plot. This will, in essence, include both formalist and gender criticism. This is where formalist criticism comes into play. The Odyssey, the second epic poetry of Homer as the presumed author, has strict dactylic hexameter with one long and two syllables, repeating poetic phrases and lines as a product of an oral tradition. This is usually common in the poetry of Latinos and ancient Greeks. This style and repetitions allows the bard or the performer to remember what comes next in the story and to improvise in the rhythm as an oral tradition. It begins in the third person's point of view, at least for Book 1 to Book 4. The epic also has an introduction of invocation as a prologue, mentioning the two major plots of the epic, also where Homer asks for inspiration, knowledge, skills, and emotion to finish his epic. After the invocation, the story starts in medias res, as usually seen in most epics, but makes more sense in the Odyssey since this is considered to be a sequel to the Iliad. Aside from that, the story takes place after the Trojan War. Therefore, it wouldn't be invigorating to start with Odysseus as a man who has been imprisoned by the goddess Calypso after being hailed as a hero. With that being said, the focus of the story begins with his son, Telemachus, and with the state of their house as his mother is surrounded by suitors who want to take over and replace his father. The use of the Ithaca as the first setting related to Odysseus is commendable as it shows the situation after war and what happened after all those years of Odysseus missing. It directly shows one of the major plots and highlights the concept of in medias res as a way of opening the story. As the story begins, Gender criticism is another perspective involved here in this analysis. It is noticeable how Athena starts getting involved with Telemachus. In this aspect, we can see that Athena holds an important role in beginning the story. It is almost like she paved the way to the journey of Telemachus to know more about the situation of his father. This is quite different from what is commonly expected of women in some literature. For instance, a goddess will be simply a beauty with godly powers but will not be relevant to the other characters in a helpful manner. Athena was able to show her abilities and intellect by helping Telemachus in his journey. Being able to switch form and having the courage to move forward and helping him is a brave move from her. It shows that she has a vital purpose in the story and was able to lead a man on what he should do next. However, there are other women as characters mentioned, named Calypso and Penelope. Calypso is portrayed as an agent of chaos to Odysseus. She holds Odysseus as a captive for years, which refrains him from coming back home to Ithaca. From book 1 to book 4, there isn't much about Calypso, but it is pretty obvious that she dominates Odysseus as she was able to imprison him. On the other hand, Penelope is a fragile, grieving woman. From book 1 to book 4, her vulnerability is easily seen, and her decision-making is definitely affected, as she tends to be unstable and indecisive when it comes to her situation and suitors. She was even dismissed by her own son for being emotional about his father. Calypso and Penelope are both emotional. They both share this kind of attachment to Odysseus, but it also shows how different it is to one another. One could be destructive, while the other is hopeful. Homer was able to show another side of our behavior of a woman, not limited to being motherly. For the male characters, Telemachus seems responsible and is eager to learn as he goes on his journey. He was able to show some weakness, like not being confident in public speaking, and was able to overcome it. However, aside from Telemachus, there is also a suitor of his mother named Antinous. He is a proud suitor and can be seen as a little pushover as he blames Penelope that she seduces the suitors. The irony, in my opinion, may not be immediately apparent to certain people, but for me, this is the highlight. Odysseus, despite being a hero, is a captive of Calypso. Telemachus, son of Odysseus, praised for stepping out and being responsible as his father is missing, was helped by Athena to finally have his journey to know the whereabouts of his father. Lastly, we have Antinous, who is so proud of himself and a suitor of Penelope, shamelessly blaming Penelope for seducing her suitors and not committing to anyone. My biggest takeaway from this gender criticism is that, regardless of our gender, feeling vulnerable does not preclude us from achieving great things, nor does being strong preclude us from experiencing difficulties. All we have to do is to be proud of ourselves and confidently face our own challenges. It will surely someday lead to our success. And that concludes the literary analysis for Homer's epic poetry, The Odyssey. Hope you guys enjoyed learning from us, and don't forget to click the subscribe button to know more about world literature topics. Thank you for listening.